I'm going to culinary school in New York City and you're coming with me. I don't actually start until next week, but I went in for a tour in uniform fittings, which let me practice my commute a little. I get to walk through the Oculus to Brookfield Place, which is so unreal, so beautiful. I can't believe I go to school in the middle of all this. First, I was fitted for my uniform, which I thought was so cute and so official. And then my admissions rep, Samantha, gave me a tour of the school, which was even more amazing than I thought it would be. I have so much to learn here over the next 9 months. Like, y'all, this library is just cookbooks. I was freaking. After I had a very celebratory lunch at La District, grabbed a coffee, and walked home full of so much gratitude and excitement for what's to come. And of course, I'm going to document it all, so follow along. Today's the day. It's time for my first day of culinary school. I started the morning with some coffee and breakfast before getting ready, saying goodbye to my cat, and heading off to Brookfield Place, which is the home of the Institute of Culinary Education. First, we were greeted with our new uniforms, and then we had an orientation session where we talked about everything from attendance to grading. Then we were assigned our kitchens where we'll be for the next 6 months, and that's also where all of our equipment was waiting for us. We finished off with the tour and had lots to bring home, but I wasn't going to leave until I got my first day of class photo. I ate at the food court downstairs and went out to find some supplies they said we needed, like a smaller notebook and tape to mark off which tools were mine. Back home, I unpacked all my new equipment and set aside what I wouldn't need for the next class, taped and packed up what I did, and hung up my uniform to get ready for day 2. It's my second day of culinary school in New York City. Today was our first class in uniform, bring out the non-slip shoes. So when I made it to ice, I put on my jacket, my apron, and my little cap. There's always food out in the lounge from the other classes, and so I grabbed a crab roll and went off to the kitchen. We learned how to set up our station, which we're expected to do before class every day, and then had a lesson on sanitation. We filled up our pepper grinders and learned our first few knife cuts. I'm trying to approach everything like I've never cooked a day in my life. That way I really learn all the right techniques, like the correct knife grip and posture, which I definitely didn't have before. And based on my cuts, I have a lot of practice to go, so I made a little risotto for dinner, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 3. Come with me to day 3 of culinary school in New York City. I know it's only my 3rd day of classes, but I already feel like I'm learning so much. I've always loved to cook and learn about food, but I'm realizing that there's so many fine details that I've just never considered. For example, we started off the morning by making vegetable stock, which in itself is very simple, but we talked about how your vegetables should be different sizes for different kinds of stock to make sure it doesn't get cloudy, which in hindsight makes so much sense. But again, never considered it. Then we learned some very specific, very precise vegetable cuts, like this medium diced potato, which I will need a lot of practice in. My favorite was the brunoise, where you cut an onion layer by layer. I'm learning it's these little details that make good food great. We roasted our potatoes in duck fat, and then I grabbed some pasta from another class. Then at night, I met some new friends for a happy hour. See you tomorrow. Let's go to day 4 of culinary school in New York City. I love my morning commute, and today I took a route that was a little more outdoors because it was raining, and I thought that'd be a good way to wake up before class, and I'm glad I did because we had a busy day. I set up my station, and then to begin class, we did a little bit of herb identification, so we were smelling and tasting different herbs and learning if they were best to add to a dish at the beginning of the cooking process, or if they were better to add in at the end or use as a garnish. We also did a lot of work on our knife cuts, and I have to say watching the videos back helps so much to see what I'm doing wrong. Then we started on eggs. We did a fried egg and also a soft scramble, which I tried to roll into an omelet just to test the waters for omelet day tomorrow. There's definitely room for improvement, but it could have been worse. I decided I had enough chopping for the day, so for dinner I made one of my favorites, tin mussel linguine, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 5. It's day 5 of culinary school in New York City. To finish off our first week of classes, we reviewed a lot of the skills that we had learned over the past few days, added in some new ones, and also talked about what would be on our upcoming exams. First, we learned how to make a cartouche, which is basically a parchment paper lid that has a lot of different uses, but today we used it to sweat down some onions that we later caramelized. We roasted red peppers over an open flame, which was very exciting because I've always had a glass stove, but I love a roasted red pepper. I was cutting up these green bell peppers so serious, like look at my face. Like I don't think I was breathing. And then we finished off class by making an American omelet and a French omelet, and I was happy with my little French omelet. It's definitely not perfect at all, but it's an improvement from yesterday, which is what matters. Then after class, I celebrated a great first week with sushi. It's day 6 of culinary school in New York City. Pellegrino is hosting its regional Young Chef Academy competition in our kitchen today, so we got to peek in a little bit, and then we were moved to another kitchen, which was a fun little change of location. Today we focused on measurements and scaling recipes, which we practiced through biscuits, waffles, and pancakes. We had a good time doing it. It was a great way to start week 2. Emily killed it on the biscuit mixing. I was making waffles, which is very serious business, apparently, judging by my face. We also made a honey butter and plated it all all up on this pretty little platter. When we got out of class, there was a feast in the lounge, and so of course I sampled that a little bit, and then I headed home. See you tomorrow. It's day 7 of culinary school in New York City. Today we focused on blanching vegetables, which is when you take a veggie, cook it briefly in salted boiling water, and then throw it in an ice bath. We blanched broccoli, green beans, and also tomatoes to make them easier to peel. Then we did something really fun. We made mayonnaise from scratch, and I knew homemade mayo was really simple to make, but I didn't realize how quick it could be and how much better it tastes than store-bought. It was so glossy and flavorful, and then we used that mayonnaise to make egg salad. Then we finished class by poaching a few eggs. I think mine could have cooked for like 30 more seconds, but hey, at least they weren't overcooked. After class, I enjoyed some cupcakes from the pastry students and went to the library to work on some homework. Yes, we do have homework in culinary school. I'll see you tomorrow for day 8. It's day 8 of culinary school in New York City. Today we made a crudité platter and a Caesar salad with 3 different dressings and dipping sauces from scratch. We worked in groups to get everything prepped. We chopped all of the veggies into bite-sized pieces, and then we blanched the broccoli and cauliflower. And then we moved on to the croutons and the dressings. We did a classic vinaigrette, a Caesar, and then my favorite, a buttermilk blue cheese. These were so good. Just like yesterday with the mayo, I feel like there's some things that you don't realize how easy and delicious they are when you make them at home, and dressings are definitely on that list. I'm really not a big lettuce fan, but I did have a plate of the Caesar salad, and I liked it. And if you know me, you know that's a pretty big deal. And after class, I went home and celebrated my cat's 2nd birthday. It's day 9 of culinary school in New York City. Today we finished off week 2, and we kicked off class by making a big pot of veggie stock, so we all rough chopped some veggies, and then we started to work on our more precise cuts. Our first practical's in a little over a week, and I have a lot of practice to do before then because I'm just not there yet. It takes me like a whole potato to get just a few good medium dice, and that's wasteful, so lots of work to be done there. And then we learned how to tourne a potato, and even more work is to be done there because what is this? But then we did something much more in my Louisiana comfort zone. We made a here are the different stages. And then we had an externship meeting and grabbed lunch in the lounge. See you next week. It's day 10 of culinary school in New York City. We had a pretty simple day. We focused on making 2 different kinds of soup, one of which was thickened by a veloute, which is one of the mother sauces. It's made of a blonde roux and stock. Once our veloute was glossy and nappe, we blanched some broccoli because we were making cream of broccoli soup. We also made a potage parmentier, which is a leek and potato soup. And then guess what we did? We drilled knife skills because we have a week until our first practical. And then keeping with the color palette, we went and got matcha. See you tomorrow for day 11. It's day 11 of culinary school in New York City. Today's lesson was all about roasting. We worked in groups to create a roasted veggie platter. First, we started with some beets, and I worked on a tomato coulis. They made the most delicious smelling curry oil and also this dill yogurt sauce that complemented all the veggies so well. I worked on a dressing for the beets, and while we were waiting for everything to cook, we learned how to supreme citrus. I blended up the coulis, we peeled the beets, and arranged everything on a platter. We were somehow left with a mountain of beets, so I brought those out to the community table. See you tomorrow for day 12. It's day 12 of culinary school in New York City. Today was such a fun day. We did some more soups and purees, starting with Palms puree, which is a nice, smooth, creamy mashed potato, which is how I like it. Hi, Chef Nin. We worked on this individually because it'll be part of a future practical exam, but then we worked on some more soups and purees in groups. We covered vegetable soup, parsnip soup, and what I mostly focused on, which was a butternut squash puree. My big takeaway from this was how much sweet foods sparkle when they have the right amount of salt, which is more than you think. My favorite dish from the day, though, was definitely the parsnip soup. It was delicious. We finished up class, but my day at ICE was not over because I came back in the evening for the first of a weekly wine essentials course. It's a 6-class program open to the public, but we get to take it for free. I learned so much already, and I can't wait for next week. See you tomorrow for day 13. It's day 13 of culinary school in New York City. Today we learned how to grill vegetables, and I realized I've never really done much grilling, if any, but I have to say I get where the grill dads are coming from because I had a great time and the veggies turned out fantastic. We marinated our veggies, which included portobello, eggplant, zucchini, red onions. We grilled them, tried to get the nice little grill marks, and then we put them back in the marinade to absorb some more flavor. We also made a few condiments, a romesco and a pesto, which we layered very generously onto the sandwich with all of those veggies with some mozzarella cheese, which we melted in the salamander. I'll see you tomorrow for day 14. It's day 14 of culinary school in New York City. Today was our last lesson before our first written and practical exams, and we learned the last component that we need to know for that exam, which is this rice pilaf. After we each finished our rice, we worked in groups to cover a few different ways to make grains and beans. My partner and I worked on a vegetable and bean chili, and then other groups did a farro and sausage, and then also a wheat berry salad. My favorite part of any meal is always the sides, the grains, the carbs, so it was definitely a fun class, and then after, I went across the street to Smorgasburg, which is a food market that's open on Fridays at the World Trade Center. I'll see you on day 15 for our first exam. It's day 15 of culinary school in New York City. Today we took our first exam, which means we're officially done with course 1. There were 2 different sections of the test. First, I took the written section, which tests all of the knowledge that we've learned up until this point. And then the second part was the practical exam, which today was your knife cuts, a rice pilaf, and blanching and shocking broccoli and green beans. I was pretty nervous. I think the time limit made the practical seem a little daunting, but I was so happy with the outcome and my scores. Now we're moving on to course 2, starting with chicken fabrication tomorrow, and I'm super excited. It's day 16 of culinary school in New York City. Today is chicken fabrication day, but first we had to get the kitchen ready. I had the very satisfying job of cutting butter. I had a little bit of experience breaking down chickens because I do it sometimes at home. I like buying whole chickens because you get to use every part of the animal and sometimes it's more economical. But I expected in culinary school to learn a much better way of doing it, and that's exactly what happened today. A couple highlights are that we learned how to cut a chicken breast supreme, which is where you leave the drumette bone attached, and also how to keep the chicken oyster attached to the chicken thigh because it's one of the best parts. Today though, we were making chicken paillard, so we removed the breast from the bone, pounded it thin, sauteed it, and then made a lemon butter caper sauce from the fond. It was delicious, and I'm excited about making more chicken dishes this week. See you tomorrow! It's day 17 of culinary school in New York City. Today we learned the chicken dish that will be tested on during our next practical. It's a classic sauteed chicken breast with a crispy skin and a delicious white wine pan sauce. But first we fabricated the chicken, which is just breaking it down into smaller pieces. We'll be doing this almost every day of this course. It all came together in one pan, and I feel like a dish like this is so good to know. It's a showstopper, it's delicious, but it couldn't be more simple. With that being said, I definitely made a mistake because my sauce was way too loose, but I was really happy with the cook on my chicken, and I know what I need to practice. Then I helped our chef with our buttermilk marinade for the chicken we're frying tomorrow, went home, and came back for our optional wine essentials class. Today we focused on different regions in France, and it was a great time as always. See you tomorrow. It's day 18 of culinary school in New York City. Today we fried the chicken that we started marinating yesterday, but first we started with the sides. We made a pomme puree, which is a super smooth mashed potato, so good. Then we took a detour to duck fabrication. This was very similar to chicken fabrication, except ducks are much fattier. We put the legs and thighs in a salt, sugar, shallot, and spice cure. That'll be the first step of our multi-day duck confit. Back to frying chicken. This was in a buttermilk marinade overnight, then it went into some flour, back into the buttermilk marinade, more flour, and then we fried it. The double dipping helps get all those little crispy bits that we love on fried chicken, and I have to say, it was amazing. After class, I volunteered to assist with the New York Wine and Food Fest cocktail masterclass that was being hosted at ICE. See you tomorrow! It's day 19 of culinary school in New York City. Today was all about duck. We started by rinsing off these legs and thighs that were curing overnight in some salt, sugar, and spices. We patted them dry and then covered them in duck fat for duck confit. Then it was the return of my nemesis, the potato tournée. It went better than last time, which is really saying nothing. Luckily, we have some time before we're tested on this. Next, we made an orange gas streak for our pan-seared duck breast, and I'm obsessed with this sauce. It was so delicious. I'll definitely be making it again. We took a brief intermission for more chicken fabrication. We scored and seared the duck breast, which finished in the oven. I kind of missed on the plating, but the flavors were there. Here's what our duck confit looked like, and we also started marinating our coq au vin for our next class. See you tomorrow! It's day 20 of culinary school in New York City. We finished off our last class by prepping our duck confit and coq au vin for today, which of course we paired with pomme puree. For the coq au vin, we seared off the chicken and then cooked all the veggies in that fond. I did my first flambe. I felt very chefy. Everything went into a hotel pan and into the oven while we glazed the pearl onions and mushrooms and some bacon fat. While we were making this dish, we were also working on our duck confit salad. And if you thought we went a day without chicken fabrication, think again, but today was our last time practicing before the test. Back to the coq au vin, we removed the chicken, strained the sauce, and reduced it. And finally, we plated everything up. It was a very delicious day. I'll see you tomorrow. It's day 21 of culinary school in New York City. We had one last chicken-focused day before we move on to pork tomorrow. We roasted chickens whole by removing the wishbone, stuffing the cavity with aromatics, putting butter under the skin, and trussing the legs. I give mine a little bow, of course. While they roasted, we worked on gravy, Brussels sprouts, potatoes, and chicken consomme. The processed mirepoix, tomatoes, ground chicken, and egg whites cook into a raft on top of the chicken stock that clarifies it. As our chickens rested, we finished up our sides by smashing the potatoes and adding our chicken drippings and more stock to our gravy. Our chef showed us how to carve our chickens, and then we plated everything up. It was so delicious. I'll see you tomorrow for day 22. It's day 22 of culinary school in New York City. Today we moved on to pork fabrication, and the first pork dish that we made was schnitzel with the German potato salad. For the fabrication part of class, our chef showed us how to turn this pork loin into tenderloin, chops, and ribs. We brined the pork chops, and then we put the ribs in a Korean barbecue marinade for later this week. For the schnitzel, we pounded the pork thin and then coated it in flour, eggs, and panko. We shallow fried each piece until it was golden brown and super crispy. Everything turned out so well. I definitely took home a lot of leftovers today. At the end of class, we learned how to truss a tenderloin, and then in the evening, I came back for our optional wine essentials class. See you tomorrow for day 23. It's day 23 of culinary school in New York City. We had a very busy but very fun day of class today. The agenda said that we were working on 3 different pork dishes and a couple of sides, and I definitely wasn't alone in being nervous about if we were going to finish or not. But not only did we finish on time, we finished early. I think we did a great job of delegating all the different steps and recipes. We did a braised pork shoulder, a roasted pork loin. Once all of our group dishes went in the oven, we individually worked on seared pork chops with a white wine pan sauce. 2 things that are always going to be my favorite part of a meal are any kind of pan sauce and potatoes au gratin, so I love today's plate. See you tomorrow for another packed day of culinary school. It's day 24 of culinary school in New York City. Today we broke down lamb legs, which was actually pretty difficult for me. I didn't really see the lines of where to cut as obviously as I felt like I should have, but we got through it. Each cut is being used in different recipes over the next few classes, starting with these lamb kebabs, which we paired with some rice and this yogurt sauce. I actually am not half bad at trussing meat, and I think that's because I know how to knit, and yarn is yarn. I mean, not really. Those are 2 very different things, but there's some transferable skills there. Our Korean barbecue ribs had been marinating for a few days, so we put them on the grill. We might have overdone it on the grill marks, but then they finished in the oven. They were so delicious. We also pre-roasted some lamb shanks for a braised next class. Here was our beautiful spread and my after-school treat. It's day 25 of culinary school in New York City. It was another day all about lamb. I think we made 4 different lamb dishes, starting with this roast that we had already covered in hoisin sauce and a spice blend. We also pre-roasted these shanks for a braise, so all of that went into the oven. We made a dried apricot and chickpea couscous as a side. Lamb is a really lean meat, so I cut up some pork fat to add to our ground lamb. Then we had a meatball competition. Very proud to say that our team came in 3rd. We used a lot of bright flavors, lemon zest, spices, and herbs. Then Sarah used the leftover ground lamb to make kofta. We thinly sliced the roast and reduced the sauce on the braise, and then we plated everything up and enjoyed our feast of lamb. I'll see you tomorrow for our final class of Module 1. It's day 26 of culinary school in New York City. Our program has 4 modules that we spend in the kitchen and then another term and an externship. Today was our final class of Module 1, and we spent it Frenching a rack of lamb, which is where you clean off and remove all the meat from the end of the ribs. I'll be honest, this was much more difficult than I expected it to be. I even tried the little twine trick, but eventually we had to move on and I had to accept defeat. We seared half of the rack and then gave it a Dijon and breadcrumb crust and put it in the oven, and then the other half of the rack went on the grill. For a side, we made pomme boulangère, which is potatoes layered with caramelized onions, and then we also made a pan sauce because if you have fond, you might as well pan sauce it. I'll see you tomorrow for our second exam. It's day 27 of culinary school in New York City. Today was course 2 exam day, so we were tested on everything we learned in this section on a written test. For the practical exam, we were graded on our chicken fabrication, our pan-seared chicken supreme, glazed green beans, pomme puree, and our pan sauce. The exams are timed, so you kind of feel like you're on a cooking competition show, which can be stressful, but I think it went pretty well, and I was really happy with my scores. We're excited to move on to course 3, but it means it was our last class with Chef Nin, who's been such a great instructor. Then at night, I came back to ICE for wine essentials. I'll see you tomorrow for the start of course 3.